Good morning, everyone. Today's a happy day for us. We are going to celebrate the wedding of Barbara Lee, who got married on New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve, I guess it was, in California. But today we'll celebrate her wedding in Washington, D.C. I convey that to you because it is a source of joy to us, as she is a source of joy in her service to the country, and her personal happiness is lovely. In any event, here we are. We've got the ayes in Iran impeachment. Let me start with Iran. Today we will have a resolution on the floor put forth by Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin. We're very proud of her experience in terms of national security under Democratic and Republican presidents, now a member of Congress, putting forth a resolution this week. Last week, in our view, the administration conducted a provocative, disproportionate airstrike against Iran, which endangered Americans, and did so without consulting Congress. When I was informed of this attack, that the administration took responsibility for it over the weekend, I said, why did you not consult with Congress? Well, we held it in closely. We held it in closely. No, you have a responsibility to consult with Congress. No, we held it close. So whoever close means, as you see, there has been criticism from the Republicans about the briefing that was put forth yesterday by the administration on this subject. Some have asked, do you agree that this is the worst intelligence classified briefing that Congress has received from this administration? As some of you have heard me say, there is stiff competition for that designation of worst. So here we are to protect American lives and values. We are passing today a war powers resolution to limit the president's military actions. The administration must de-escalate and must prevent further violence. America and the world cannot afford war. Some of you have heard me say that in December I took a bipartisan delegation to the 75th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. It was just so remarkable to meet our VIPs, were our veterans who served at the Battle of the Bulge, some of them also at Normandy. Imagine the courage, teenagers, most of them at the time. But the compelling message from the veteran who spoke for them, along with the King of Belgium and the Archduke of Luxembourg and the President of Germany. The veteran who spoke, he spoke about the band of brothers. He spoke about allies working together, multilateralism. He spoke about the challenges they faced in those winters, reminding me really of Washington crossing the Delaware, because it was in December and it was snowing and they were not as prepared for snow and camouflage from snow as they needed to be. But just seeing their patriotism, their courage, those young people, and this veteran coming to speak for them, 90-some years old. At the end of his remarks, he said, I just have one message, and I don't know if it's appropriate to say, but I will. Pray for peace. Pray for peace. That's what we all do. Protecting the American people is our first responsibility. Protect and defend, an oath we take, not only of our Constitution, but of the American people. Pray for peace. That's what we must do. And so what happened, in the view of many of us, is not promoting peace, but an escalation. Not that we have any confidence in the goodness or the good intentions of Iran, and we certainly do not respect, and I, from my intelligence background, know just how bad Soleimani was. It's not because we expect good things from them, but we expect great things from us. Now, in terms of impeachment, you will keep asking me the same question. I keep giving you the same answer. As I said right from the start, we need to see the arena in which we are sending our managers. Is that too much to ask? In October, we put forth H.R. 660, which is House resolution, which talked about the terms under which we would proceed further to further proceed with the investigation, so that people knew what the battlefield would look like. We expect to see that here. I hear different things. I hear that they might want to, you've probably heard one way or another, some of them have suggested they might want to dismiss. Dismiss equals cover-up. Dismiss equals admission that you're afraid of the facts, the truth, the witnesses, and the documentation. We would have hoped that, as with the Clinton process, that there would have been a bipartisan resolution determining how to proceed. Contrary to what the majority leader says, he says this is like the Clinton. No, it's not at all. And I sent our members yesterday 6 points in which it is, 6 of the points in which it is different. But nonetheless, at some point, we would hope that we would see from them what the terms of engagement will be. We are ready. We are proud of our defense of the Constitution of the United States. We are concerned that the senators will not be able to live up to the oath that they must take to have an impartial trial. So much for that. At the same time as this is all going on, it's important to note that there's so many other things of concern to the American people. One is the assault on the Affordable Care Act that this administration is engaged in the courts, in the Congress, and we are fighting them in the courts, in the Congress, and in the country. But right now, they are in the court. Instead of defending the law of the land, as is the responsibility of the Justice Department, this administration is fighting the law of the land. That means benefit for pre-existing conditions, no lifetime limits or annual limits, child staying on your policy till 26, being a woman no longer being a pre-existing condition. The list goes on and on that they want to tear down. So with all of the other, shall we say, distractions going on, which are a collateral benefit to the administration because it is a distraction, as they are masterful at, of what's going on. In addition to that, and related to health, is the statement from the administration that they're no longer going to enforce the NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act. This means more polluters will be right there next to the water supply of our children. That's a public health issue. That they, in their denial of climate, they are going to not use the climate issue as anything to do with environmental decision-making. Public should know this. Denial about the climate crisis in the midst of fires in Australia, and we have them in our own country. And then I'll close by just talking about how proud we are of the work that our members have done for the people. We have moved to lower health care costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs. H.R. 3, wildly popular in the country, hopefully went past the House before we left. We also were proud to pass the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, which is sitting over in the Senate. It's sitting over there with maybe 400 bills we've sent over, more than 275 of them bipartisan legislation. One of them we observed yesterday, the 9th anniversary of the assault on Gabby Giffords' life. This is a bullet that I wear. That's of the highest priority, because if they would pass this bill, it would save lives, the bill to have sensible background check legislation. So again, we're proud of our legislative agenda to lower health care costs, keep the American people safe, build bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure. And this coming week, in the next period of time, our chairman, led by Peter DeFazio, Chairman DeFazio of the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee, will be putting forth our most current initiative on the I say climate because you can't do infrastructure without having a recognition of resilience and green technologies. So that's where we are there. Now, today, We again send sad condolences to the person who lost his or her life in Puerto Rico, others whose homes were damaged. We call upon the White House to stop its unlawful withholding of funds from Puerto Rico. We also, there are needs that need to be met. There has been a disaster designated, but the ongoing withholding of funds appropriated by Congress to Puerto Rico is illegal, and we call upon the administration to cease and desist that illegal activity. So what else do we have here? Maybe we'll just take some questions from all of you. Nancy?
Madam Speaker.
You say that you need to know what the arena looks like
Yes.
in the Senate. How long are you prepared to hold on to the articles of impeachment if you don't get the answers you're looking for?
Well, it's interesting just to listen to what they say, because they may not. The other day, you probably heard the leader say, I'm glad to show you what it is when I'm ready. But we don't know when he's going to be glad to be ready to show it to us. So there is something that they will have. And then he says, well, we'll pass it once we get the articles. In the past few weeks, since we've had this, shall we say, impasse, because they won't reveal the terms of engagement, many things have been accomplished that are collateral benefit to the discussion. And they relate to, on December 20th, new emails showed that 91 minutes after Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president, a top OMB aide asked DOD to hold off on sending military aid to the Ukraine, directly related to that call. On December 29th, was public revelations about Mulvaney's role in the delay of the aid, the effort of lawyers at OMB, DOJ, and White House to justify the delay, and the alarm that the delay caused within the administration, because everyone was not in agreement. Last Thursday, newly unredacted Pentagon emails exposed serious concerns by administration officials about the legality of the president's hold on the aid, aid to Ukraine. And just this week, Bolton announced that he would comply with a subpoena compelling his testimony. His lawyers have stated he has new relevant information. These and other of our investigation and our articles necessitate a fair trial with documents and witnesses. They don't want documents, the documentation. They don't want witnesses. They may want a dismissal, which is proof that they cannot clear the president of the wrongdoing that he has put forth.
So are you willing to hold on to the articles indefinitely?
No, I'm not holding them indefinitely. I'll send them over when I'm ready. And that will probably be soon. I just, he said, if you don't send them over, I'm going to pass the Mexico-U.S. Canada trade agreement. Okay. But no, we want to see what they're willing to do and the manner in which they will do it. But we will not let them say, oh, this is just like Clinton, fair is fair. It's not. Documentation, witnesses, facts, truth. That's what they're afraid of.
Speaker Pelosi,
Yes.
The Democrats call him a clear and present danger to democracy.
Who are we talking about?
House Democrats in the impeachment called the president.
I thought you meant Mitch McConnell. Okay.
But shouldn't you move more expeditiously, given the fact that you raised this serious concern that the president poses to?
No, I think we should move smartly and strategically.
Madam Speaker,
Yes,
on
Jen.
Iran, good morning. This is an H-Con res, not a
Yes.
joint resolution.
A concurrent resolution,
Right.
yes.
There's been some criticism from both sides that this should be binding. I know there's some parliamentary questions about it being privileged over there, but why not make this with real teeth to make this like an AUMF?
This is with real teeth. If you are familiar with the War Powers Act, and I'll get you the text, the War Powers Act enables two approaches to go forward. One is a concurrent resolution, and it gives the procedure for that, which we will be following today, and it gives a path for concurrent, for a H-Con resolution, we're taking this path because it does not require a statement by a signature of the President of the United States. This is a statement of the Congress of the United States, and I will not have that statement be diminished by whether the President will veto it or not.
Madam Speaker, many of your members have raised serious concerns about the timing of the strike against Soleimani, the administration's justification. You've been briefed. Do you think that the administration misled the American people about an imminent attack?
I think that it's very unfortunate that right now, because I was briefed in the Gang of Eight and I was briefed in the, what did he call it, demeaning and worst classified briefing that the Republican senators ever heard yesterday. So it's, at this point, in terms of what is in the public domain, difficult to address some of what they contended. However, I will say this, because I was informed by phone call, as I mentioned to you earlier, I think I did anyway, that when I was briefed by the Secretary of Defense and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs over the weekend, taking responsibility for the killing, that it was disdainful in terms of not consulting with Congress, dismissive. We held it closely, really. So if you want us to all join together, let us have a strategy that we work together on. I do not believe, in terms of what is in the public domain, that they have made the country safer by what they did. And that is what our responsibility is. We'll have more discussion of this on the floor today at some length. But it's real, again, as I go back to the Battle of the Bulge, pray for peace. We must avoid war. And the cavalier attitude of this administration, it's stunning. And the president to say, oh, I inform you by reading my tweets. No, that's not the relationship that our founders had in mind in the Constitution of the United States when they gave power to the president, to the White House, to do one thing in terms of our national security, and to the Congress to declare war and to allocate resources and the rest. So this is your question is an important one. We will have 2 hours of debate, an hour on the rule, 2 hours on the bill today to put forth some of the factual basis of the concern that we have. And let me just say this, because you hear the administration say, well, we were justified because the Office of Legal Counsel said. The Office of Legal Counsel is a tool of the President of the United States. That's who that is. So whatever the President wants to be declared legal, his Office of Legal Counsel declares it so. So it's misleading to the public as to what the War Powers Act, Article 2 that gives the President certain powers, Article 1 that gives the Congress certain powers are. It's a very big issue now because it's nothing less than preventing war as we honor our first responsibility to protect the American people.
Madam Speaker,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, okay.
The briefers yesterday that came to the Senate, several people came out and said the briefers told them that putting out information debating the War Powers Act would empower Iran. The House floor is debating war powers around Iran. What do you say to the Trump administration if they're telling you that's empowering Iran?
I don't spend a whole lot of time telling them anything because I don't know what their basis of judgment is to receive information. However, I will say this. If they think that any statement they make is there to curtail public debate on a subject as serious as this, it just explains to you the seriousness of the situation that we are in. We will debate on the floor of the House. Now, we are not going on the floor talking about what we learned in the, and they said at the beginning, they said, even if you read it in the newspaper, if you hear it in here, you can't talk about it. And then they proceed to tell us many things that we have read in the local metropolitan journals that are seen on TV. But that's foolish. It's completely foolish. And as I say, we have no illusions about Iran, no illusions about Soleimani. He was a terrible person did bad things, but it's not about how bad they are. It's about how good we are, protecting the people in a way that prevents war and does not have us producing again and again generations of veterans who are suffering because of it. Let me just close by saying this. When we were there, and I've met many of these veterans at 70th anniversary of Normandy. When I met them there, I said, well, my uncle was in World War II, close to the Battle of the Bulge. They said, well, we went there next. And these were so brave teenagers, mostly. They were 18, 19, some 17 years old. And when we talked to them this time, because deeper relationships over time, they said, you know, I never wanted to kill anybody. I didn't want to kill the Germans. I was incapacitating them. I would shoot them in the leg or something. And then one of them told me, I killed somebody, and I found out later he was a doctor, and I've always carried that with me. I said, well, you were instructed to shoot him, because a superior said, you take him, I'll take him, you know. And he said, well, I still never forget that. So we all would die for our country. We take pride in saying that. But to kill for our country is a pretty traumatic thing. So when we want to engage in these, whatever you want to call this that the president engaged in, we have to be really careful about how we endanger our men and women in uniform who courageously, patriotically put themselves out there to protect and defend. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Because the airstrike targeting General Soleimani happened in Iraq, is it time for the House to consider a broader AUMF? I know that that's sort of the legal justification the administration has put forward with this airstrike. Is it time for Congress to get rid of the 2001, 2002 AUMF?
For sure. Well, we did get rid of the AUMF of 2002, and it was in an appropriations bill, and it passed in a bipartisan way. And in the dark of night, the then Speaker Ryan just took it out. It was highly unusual. Highly unusual. They just went and took it out. I mean, that's ridiculous, but that's what he did. So Congress has already passed rejecting, after it passed both houses, he took it out before it was signed. So we will have that resolution coming up soon under leadership of Congresswoman Barbara Lee, whose wedding we observed today. And then the question is, what do we do about an AUMF? It's harder than you would think, because an AUMF, so who's president, a Democrat or Republican, how much power, confidence do you have in that person, regardless of party, to execute an AUMF? And the decisions that have to be made about an AUMF, it's important to note, are what is the timing of it? This one is too long. It didn't have a date. Should have a date. Not one that couldn't be renewed, but nonetheless it should have a date. The timing, the geography. What are we talking about? This was to go into Iraq. It was used then to pursue al-Qaeda, different places, and here we are. And third, what is the scope? Are we talking about boots on the ground? Are we talking about air cover? What are we talking about in terms of scope? So timing, geography, and scope. When you have that debate, it's, well, I want the president to have as much power, or I want the president not to have as much power. So it's hard. It's harder than you would think, but we have to do it. And when we do it, we have to have it with enough time that is realistic militarily, but also not endless, so that we're in a situation that we're in now. So to your point, the argument would be made that putting the shoe on the other foot, if the United States had a high level, maybe the second most important person in the country, assassinated wherever, the United States might consider that an assault on our country, right? And the Iranians might as well, even though this took place at the Iraqi airport. And so it's foggy. There are those who think, well, it was in Iraq, so it counts. Or it was an assault on Iran, so it shouldn't count. I don't think there's anybody who thinks that AUMF would apply in Iran. to your other point on it, though, it is it needs to be addressed, rewritten, because we have to have an authorization of use of military force specific to the danger that we are addressing. One last question, yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned the Clinton impeachment trial agreement, the need for witnesses and documents. What other details specifically are you waiting to hear from Senator McConnell, and why not fully turn over these negotiations now instead of Schumer?
Well, they are in the Senate hands. This is the Senate, and they have tried to have a bipartisan approach to how they would conduct the investigation as what are we calling it? The trial, conduct the trial. But feebly, the majority leader has said this is just like Clinton, except it isn't. It's exactly not like Clinton in that he won't do a bipartisan agreement on how to proceed. So that's very important. But it is not incidental to say, but for the documentation and the witnesses. Now, now, separate from all of that, under the House Senate rules of 1986, what is allowed for the presentation from the House is one person to speak. One person to speak. So are those the terms? Is that what we should be ready for? Or is there something else that they have in mind? It's one person to speak for the House and one person to speak for the White House. Did you know that? 1986. So is that the rule under which they're going? That all we want to know is, what are the rules? It doesn't mean we have to agree to the rules or we have to like the rules. We just want to know what they are. So getting back to sports, because that's all we live, right? Football, college, high school, professional. Do we send in our team or do we have to send in special team as well as the team? Because we have to know what that trial is about.
Why not send the articles over and turn the whole negotiations over to Senator Schumer?
No, yeah, they've had the negotiation. The senator has said he doesn't have to have witnesses and the rest. So that's it. But, we may send them over. But we have I'm not responsible to Mitch McConnell or anybody else except my members and the people who have worked so hard on this. Members and staff, patriotically, honoring the oath of office, the Constitution of the United States. And I will give them our best shot to find the truth for our bosses, the American people. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Going to the Niners game? You going to the Niners game?
It would be my intention to go. I went to the one game in San Francisco. We watched all together the second game in Seattle. I have, unfortunately, responsibilities to save our country from peril. So this weekend, so I have on my Democratic, wearing that hat of political leader this weekend. So my family will enjoy our season tickets at the 49er game. And then next week, get one game at a time. And then we'll see about
Baltimore-San Francisco Super Bowl?
Well, we've had the Baltimore-San Francisco Super Bowl. And and that was hard because I had been rooting for both teams all along, right? And again, going to the 49er games and watching the Baltimore games on TV right there at the stadium. So what happens is they both win. Nobody was in a more difficult situation than I, the mother of the coaches, brothers coaching the teams. And then you saw what happened at that game. But the D'Alessandros from Baltimore came all dressed in purple, and the Pelosis from San Francisco all came in red, and we had a lovely family reunion. This time, I hope that we'd get a similar result, that we'd have both teams in I already, because of my, shall we say, responsibilities to win the House for the Democrats and hopefully the Electoral College for the American people, I was scheduled to be in Florida that weekend. So I'm all set. I'm all set, one way or another.
Do you think Harry and Meghan will move to California?
Who knows? We're talking about Tom Brady. I mean, who knows? Who knows what happens with all this? But isn't it interesting? And it's wonderful because it's so unifying. You know, everybody, whatever your politics or whatever, forget it. It's about the team. And we all like to say, and we all believe that we're all Team USA. So however it turns out. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I tried.